Wife caught cheating on me while vacationing in the Georgia mountains. The idea for our Georgia mountains getaway came up during one of those late evening conversations where we were both scrolling through our phones instead of talking to each other. My wife suggested we rent a cabin for 2 weeks, somewhere remote, where the kids could explore nature and we could reconnect as a family. 16 years of marriage had taught me to recognize when something was off about her behavior, and lately everything felt different. She had become protective of her phone in ways that made my stomach twist into knots. My wife was the woman who used to leave her device lying around carelessly, but now carries it everywhere. When I walked into rooms where she would move like Wonder Woman to close whatever she was doing with her phone. Our physical relationship had cooled to the point where we felt like roommates sharing a house rather than spouses sharing a life. She would turn away when I tried to kiss her goodnight, claiming exhaustion from managing her father's inherited commercial properties. These buildings generated steady monthly income that had always been our financial safety net, but suddenly she seemed stressed about them constantly. The properties required minimal oversight since she had hired a management company years ago, yet she claimed they were consuming all her mental energy. Something was eating away at the foundation of our marriage, and I could feel it crumbling beneath my feet. My wife found this perfect cabin online, nestled deep in the North Georgia mountains with enough space for our 2 children to roam safely. The rental came with hiking trails, a fishing pond, and complete isolation from the busy world we were trying to escape. She seemed unusually excited about this vacation, more animated than she had been in months about anything involving our family. Her enthusiasm should have made me happy, but instead, it triggered an alarm in my gut that I could not ignore, but I don't know why. The week before our departure, I made a decision that would change everything. I hired a private investigator. Her whole demeanor put me on edge, and the dead bedroom definitely kind of made me nervous. The investigator was a middle-aged woman who specialized in infidelity cases and came highly recommended through discreet channels and online reviews. She explained that many suspicious spouses wait too long to gather evidence, allowing cheating partners to cover their tracks more effectively. Her fees were substantial, but the commercial properties my wife inherited provided us with enough disposable income to afford her services. We met at a diner way across the county where nobody would recognize either of us. She asked detailed questions about my wife's routines, her work schedule, and the specific behaviors that had raised my suspicions. The investigator explained that vacation surveillance would be challenging due to the remote location, but she had experience with similar cases. She would position herself strategically around the cabin area and document any unusual activity while maintaining complete invisibility. The plan was for her to begin surveillance before we arrived and continue throughout our stay. I provided her with photos of my wife, our vehicle information, and the exact cabin address. She assured me that if nothing suspicious occurred, I would receive a clean report and could rebuild trust with my wife. However, if my suspicions proved correct, she would gather the evidence needed for whatever decisions I might need to make. Part of me hoped desperately that I was wrong, that my wife was simply going through some personal struggle that had nothing to do with infidelity. But another part of me, the part that had been married to her for 16 years, already knew what the investigator would discover in those Georgia mountains. The drive to Georgia took longer than expected because our youngest needed frequent bathroom stops. My wife seemed nervous during the entire trip, constantly checking her phone whenever she thought I was focused on the road. She kept mentioning how excited she was to finally relax, but her body language suggested anything but relaxation. The cabin exceeded our expectations when we finally arrived in the late afternoon. Massive windows overlooked a valley filled with dense forest, and the wraparound porch provided perfect spots for morning coffee. Our children immediately ran to explore the property while my wife began unpacking with unusual efficiency. I noticed she had brought more luggage than normal for a 2-week trip. including a bag I had never seen before. When I asked about it, she claimed it contained extra books and crafting supplies for the long vacation. Her response seemed reasonable, but for some reason, it just felt suspicious. That first evening, she excused herself to take a shower while I helped the kids settle into their rooms. I heard her phone buzzing repeatedly from the bathroom, which was odd since cell service at the cabin was spotty at best. When she emerged, she mentioned needing to check on her properties, but seemed frustrated that the internet connection was too weak for video calls. Over the next few mornings, my wife established herself a routine that seemed almost military. She would wake up early and disappear onto the back porch with her coffee, claiming she needed quiet time to think. From the kitchen window, I could see her typing furiously on her phone, then waiting, then typing again. Whenever I joined her outside, she would quickly put the device away and make conversation about the beautiful scenery. The investigator had given me a secure phone number to text if I observed anything suspicious. I sent her a message describing my wife's morning routine and the unusual amount of phone activity. Her response came back within an hour, confirming that she was positioned nearby and had already documented several interesting developments. She did not elaborate on what those developments were, which left me feeling both relieved and terrified. My wife suggested that I take the kids on a day trip to a nearby waterfall attraction while she stayed behind to rest. She claimed the drive would be too tiring for her and that someone should stay at the cabin in case of emergencies. The suggestion surprised me since she usually insisted on family activities during vacations, but I agreed without questioning her motives. We planned the outing for later in the week, giving her several hours alone at the property. That night, she seemed more affectionate than she had been in months, which only deepened my suspicions about her behavior. She asked detailed questions about our planned waterfall trip, wanting to know exactly when we would leave and return. Her sudden interest in our schedule felt like preparation rather than casual curiosity. The investigator sent me another text the next morning, asking for the specific details of our planned day trip. She needed to adjust her surveillance strategy to account for my absence from the property. I provided her with our departure time and estimated return, feeling like I was coordinating a military operation rather than planning a family vacation. All of this was driving me insane, but I had to do it. My wife's behavior was shitty right before we came on this trip. Every smile she gave me felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest, but I maintained this charade. The Georgia mountains had become the stage for what I suspected would be the final act of our 16-year marriage. The morning of our waterfall trip arrived with unseasonably warm weather that made the kids even more excited about the adventure. My wife packed us a lunch with unusual attention to detail, including snacks she normally never remembered to bring. She seemed eager for us to leave, checking the time repeatedly and asking if we had everything we needed. Her behavior felt like someone trying to rush guests out of their house before an important visitor arrived. I loaded the kids into our rental car while she stood on the porch, waving goodbye with a really big smile. The drive to the waterfall took 45 minutes through winding mountain roads that made our youngest car sick. We spent the morning hiking the trails and letting the kids splash in the shallow pools at the base of the falls. My phone had no signal in the area, which meant I could not contact the investigator or receive any updates about what was happening back at the cabin. The isolation felt suffocating rather than peaceful as my mind raced through every possible scenario. My children were having the time of their lives, completely unaware that their parents' marriage was probably coming to an end while they played in the mountain stream. We returned to the cabin earlier than planned because the heat became unbearable for extended hiking. My wife seemed genuinely surprised to see us pull into the driveway. She met us at the front door with lots of enthusiasm, asking about our adventure while blocking our view inside of the cabin. She looked different and somewhat wet, as if she had just gotten out of the shower, and she was wearing clothes I had not seen her pack. There was a faint smell of cologne in the air. which was not mine, something expensive and unfamiliar. My wife claimed she had been cleaning all morning, which explained why she looked flustered, but the cabin did not appear any cleaner than when we left. She insisted on making lunch immediately, even though we had eaten sandwiches at the Waterfall, keeping herself busy in the kitchen area. The investigator sent me a text later that late afternoon while my wife was napping and the kids were watching a movie. Her message was brief but devastating. Need to meet tonight after the family is asleep. I need you to see what I have. The professional tone of her communication told me everything I needed to know about what she had witnessed. I spent the rest of the early evening in a haze, going through the motions of a family vacation while my world crumbled around me. My wife seemed more relaxed than she had been since we arrived, almost glowing in a way. She was affectionate with the kids and even tried to hold my hand while we sat on the porch watching the sunset. Her sudden change in mood confirmed what I already suspected about how she had spent her morning alone. After the children fell asleep, I told my wife I needed to take a walk to clear my head from all the driving. She barely looked up from her book, claiming she was too tired to join me for our usual evening stroll. I met the investigator at a predetermined location half a mile from the cabin, deep enough in the woods that no sound would carry. She handed me an envelope without saying a word, her expression telling me she had seen this scenario play out countless times before. The photos inside were crystal clear despite being taken from a distance. My wife opened the front door to let in a man I recognized but had never suspected. The same man who had been at several social gatherings with his own wife, someone we had shared dinners with as couples. Him carrying an overnight bag into our rental cabin, as if he belonged there. The investigator explained that he had arrived within 20 minutes of our departure and left just 10 minutes before we returned. She had documented his license plate, taken photos of both of them together, and recorded the exact timeline of his visit. The evidence was overwhelming and concrete. I walked back to the cabin in complete silence, knowing that my 16-year marriage was officially over, but having no idea how to process that reality. The remainder of our vacation passed like a bad dream, where I played the role of loving husband while planning the destruction of my marriage. My wife continued her charade of family devotion, completely unaware that her affair had been documented in excruciating detail. She even suggested extending our stay by a few more nights, which would have been laughable if the situation was not so devastating. I maintained my facade perfectly, participating in family activities and making small talk as if nothing had changed. The investigator continued her surveillance for the remaining week, but my wife made no further attempts to contact her affair partner. She seemed satisfied with whatever had happened during our absence and returned to her normal vacation behavior. When we finally packed up to leave Georgia, she appeared genuinely sad to go, claiming the mountains had been exactly what our family needed. Back in our regular routine, I began the process of quietly destroying the life we had built together. The first call I made was to a divorce attorney who specialized in infidelity cases and had been recommended by the investigator. The consultation revealed information about Georgia divorce law that completely changed my strategy for moving forward. The lawyer explained that Georgia still recognized adultery as grounds for divorce, which could impact the outcome of the divorce. More importantly, the photographic evidence I possessed would be admissible in court and could significantly influence the final settlement. The commercial properties my wife had inherited from her father would be considered marital assets despite the inheritance, since we had been married when she received them and were commingled with marital funds. Her affair gave me leverage that I had not expected to have in divorce proceedings. The attorney advised me to gather additional evidence quietly before filing any paperwork or confronting my wife about her infidelity. I hired a forensic accountant to analyze our financial situation and document the income generated by her inherited properties. The investigator continued to monitor my wife's activities, although she had become much more cautious since returning from our vacation. I spent the next 3 months building an airtight case while living with a woman who had betrayed our marriage vows. Every meal we shared, every conversation about our children's futures, every moment of false intimacy felt like torture. My wife seemed oblivious to my changed behavior, probably assuming I was going through some midlife adjustment. She occasionally asked if I was feeling all right, but never pushed for deeper conversations that might have revealed my knowledge of her affair. When my lawyer finally filed the divorce papers, my wife's shock was completely genuine. She had no idea that her carefully planned affair had been documented and would be used against her in court. The settlement negotiations were swift and brutal once her attorney reviewed the photographic evidence. Her inheritance properties, which had generated substantial monthly income for years, became part of the marital asset division. The final decree awarded me the family home, and we shared custody of the kids, 50-50. My wife was ordered to pay child support and alimony for 6 years, a reversal that she never saw coming. One of the commercial properties that her father had left her was sold to satisfy some of the settlement terms. Her affair partner's marriage also ended when his wife learned about the affair, creating a domino effect of destroyed families. I never confronted my wife directly about her infidelity or gave her the opportunity to offer explanations or apologies. The legal system handled our communication through attorneys, which kept everything professional and final. Those Georgia mountains had indeed provided exactly what our family needed, just not in the way my wife had intended. The vacation she had planned to facilitate her affair became the beginning of the end of everything she thought she could keep. Commentary. Well, OP spent some money to find out why his wife's behavior was shitty. I know that private investigator cost him some money, but he got some of that back in his divorce. But at the same time, not every man who's experiencing infidelity has access to resources like this man did.